Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Black Enough, Man Enough Live. I am Daniel P. Calderon, and I am super excited to be on tonight to introduce G. Smalls, which is actually a friend of mine. We met last year through mutual friends, and we started working together on the release of his book. And it's finally out, y'all. It's been such a long road, and it is finally out, and it's such a beautiful book. The words that G puts into it, and he kind of bears all. And we're excited here to bring to life the book in a lot of ways. We have G's mother, which is Rita Smalls, on tonight. We have a friend of G, David Malebranche, with his mother, which is a super pleasant surprise. Without further ado, we're going to introduce G to the live. How you doing, G?
Hi.
Hey, what's going on? So, finally, your book is out.
Yes, the book is out. I'm super excited about it. I'm super nervous about it because now it's out. There's no turning back. So it's just out there. Like as you said, it's a very vulnerable book. I don't hold back much, so that's a little nerve-wracking. But overall, I'm very excited.
Yeah, and then we're super excited to actually bring it to life on the work from home platform, a platform that you supported earlier this year. We started to do programming because we were all quarantined. So I'm just so grateful for technology that, we didn't even plan to have a virtual event for your book, but here we are now, and we get to have way more reach than we would have ever thought. So I'm just excited for people to hear a little bit from you. I know you're going to start the show off by reading a little excerpt from the book. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, G. Smalls, Black Enough, Man Enough.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Welcome, everybody. I haven't done this in a long time. I know a lot of you know me from Love Works, where I hosted Love Works with my husband Juan, or the Gentleman's Foundation, or Virgil's, or just friends and family that are watching and supporting my book. I just really appreciate it. I'm a little nervous tonight, so bear with me. I'm gonna go ahead and dive in and give you a little reading from chapter 1, actually page 2. And this is actually my very, very first reading. So y'all are busting my cherry tonight. So let me go ahead and jump into that reading, and afterwards, I'm going to bring in Dr. David and his mom. Hi, Carlton, I said as I waved to him and his mom. Hi, he said softly. The waiting area was small and quiet. It smelled like dusty old furniture. It resembled the waiting area of a small dentist's office. I can tell Carlton was nervous. I felt more anxious than anything. My mom spoke to Carlton's mother while we sat and waited. You nervous, honey? My mom asked, looking at me with excited eyes. No, not really. Just ready to get it over with. I replied while Carlton and his mom disappeared down the long hallway after his name was called. I didn't see anyone else come out. I swung my legs back and forth in the chair with my hands folded for about 10 minutes before Carlton came back. I could not tell from his face how things went. I'm not sure that Carlton knew either. They asked for me to tell you to go back there, Greg, Carlton's mom said to me. She looked happy. Last room on the right, you are the last one to audition. Good luck. Ready, Gregory? My mom asked. She rarely called me Gregory. It always made me blush when she did. Yep, let's go, I replied as I popped out of my chair. As I walked into the small conference room, there was a young white woman with blonde hair seated at the table alongside an older white man with gray hair who briefly glanced up before looking down at his paperwork. Hi, Greg, I'm Amber, the excited young woman said. And you must be Mom. Why don't the two of you have a seat? Her excitement started to make me a little nervous. Hi, thank you, my mom said as we both took a seat. Say hi, Greg. Hello. This is my colleague Dan, and we're going to be working with you today. We won't take up too much time. It will be really quick. We just need you to read these last few lines here. Amber handed me a sheet of paper with the scene on it. Dan didn't look up or utter a word. I'm going to start, and you will read the lines that say Darnell. Do you see that there? Can you do that for me? My mom looked over to see what Amber was referring to and pointed at Darnell's first line. I see him, Mommy, I whispered to her. Then I said to Amber, yeah, I can do him. Okay, perfect. Here we go. Amber read the first line. I replied with the next, and so on. I think I did a pretty decent job, but I wasn't quite sure. Before I knew it, it was over. You did a great job, Greg. Why don't you step outside while we talk to Mom? It'll just be a minute or two. Okay. I walked out of the room nervously, thinking they must want me if they want to talk to Mommy. I started to get excited at the thoughts of me taking my first plane trip to Hollywood. In less than a minute, my mom exited the conference room. I could tell it was not good news. Disappointed, she put her hand on top of my back and led me out of the office building. What'd they say, Mommy? I asked after buckling my seatbelt. They say they thought you did a good job, but I could tell my mom didn't quite know how to deliver the bad news to me. They were looking for someone who looks a little more black, someone that has hair and skin like other black boys. You are different than the rest of them. I'm sorry. Maybe next time. My light, bright skin and soft, wavy hair would not make the cut as Darnell. Since that day in 1984, I have never had another chance to be in a Hollywood movie in Charleston, not because opportunities to act never came, but because of what happened that day. I never found the courage to act again. What role would I play? I couldn't play a white boy even though my mother was white. I couldn't play a black boy even though my father is black. Who am I? What am I? No one looks like me on TV or anywhere else for that matter. I was different. And on that day, I felt that way for the very first time. So with that, I want to go ahead and bring in David and his mom, Miss Donna. Hi.
Hey, is that a cocktail or is that water?
It's water, and my mouth was so dry reading that. What are you laughing at? That was not a funny story.
No, it's not a funny story, but it's a good story. It's a good story.
That's a very good story.
Thank you. So I kind of just wanted to first start off, just kind of introduce you a little bit. I'm not going to give a big long bio because I want to just jump right into the conversation. But a lot of people know Dr. David as from being the HIV doctor, one of the HIV doctors. You're also a professor at Morehouse. And you also have a memoir yourself called Standing on His Shoulders, which is about the relationship with your father, which discusses race a lot. So that's why I really want to have you on. I'm really excited to have you on. Having, a similar experience as I did growing up with a white mom and a black dad. And it's such a delight to have your mom on, Miss Donna. Thank you so much for joining. This has been a pleasant surprise for us. So, David,
yes.
Just listening to what I shared in the first least experience I remember being different. I want to ask you, when did you realize that you were different?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think I really realized until, I think the best recollection I have, I don't know whether my mother can tell a different story, but being at a summer camp, and we're in upstate New York right now, so there was a lake called Sacandaga Lake that we used to go to and rent a camp. My dad used to take only 1 week of vacation a year. That was how hardworking he was. And we went up there to the camp, and I was playing with some other kids. And one of the little kids, we got in an argument. We're just playing, calling each other different names. And he came out and called me the N-word. And I went back to my father and I said, Dad, what does the N-word mean? And he said, who called you that? And I said, well, one of the kids over at the lake called me that. And he said, well, you go back, and if they call you that again, then you call them white trash. And I was like, okay. And so that's what he wanted me to call them. And so he didn't really explain the history of the word to me. He didn't tell me what it meant or kind of the significance that it had, but it left an impression. And that was the first time kind of I realized that I was different from these other kids. And when I went back, he called me the N-word again, and I called him white trash, and he kind of looked at me like, really? Like, is that supposed to hurt me? And he just ran away. And so it wasn't really big, but I think at that point was when I first started to realize that I was different. I know my mother.
How old were you again?
I was probably about 6 or 7, maybe.
Maybe a little bit older, 8 or 9, I think. So.
Yeah, maybe 8 or 9.
And so tell me a little bit. So this is the story to me is this is when you found out you were different from white kids, not necessarily different from black kids. So tell me a little bit about how you grew up in your neighborhood and so forth.
Oh, well, we lived in Schenectady, New York, and basically Schenectady, New York, where we lived, it was pure white.
Okay.
Okay. There was a black section in town, but that's not where we wanted to live. Okay, my husband and I, all right. Being both professionals, it just was not to be. So David and his sister both went to private schools, Catholic schools, and very little interaction with any black people or black children at all.
Yeah.
And,
so what was your conversation, if any, you and your husband's conversation about what you would tell David about his mixed race and how to identify or how he should identify?
He should identify as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they did. My dad's favorite expression was always, "I'm not a race, I'm a member of the human race." And even though he was a black man born and raised in Haiti, he was always confused about the United States because he was always told he was the best. He was always told that blackness was beautiful. And when he came to this country, it was the complete opposite, where people looked at him like he was stupid. People looked at him like they condescended to him, like he was beneath them. And he was looking like, I'm smarter than you. I'm better than you. What are you talking about? So it was a huge culture shock. So I remember them telling me one time that they wanted to raise me and my sister as like raceless children. And so that was hard. There weren't many black kids in the Catholic high school that we went to or the grade school that we went to. Yeah. And I remember specifically having a lot of white friends who would say stuff like, "Oh, David, blah, blah." They were telling a joke and then they'd say, "Nigger. Oops, sorry, Dave." And I remember I was just like, okay. And then I didn't get to be around a lot of other black people until college. And ironically, that college was Princeton University, one of the whitest colleges in the nation. But that's where we had a really tight-knit black community.
What did you feel growing up as it related to your race? Did you feel that you were white? Did you feel that you were black? Did you feel that you were both? Like, what did you feel amongst the other kids?
Yeah, I guess after I got called the N-word, I guess that's how I identified after that. And then I remember, people saying stuff. I remember working in a hospital as a janitor and, people calling me colored. I got called everything from, because it wasn't like back then, like this is the 70s to 80s, there weren't really a lot of Latinos in our area as well. So you were either black or you were white. So I didn't look white, so they just would call me nigger. So that was it. You know what I'm saying? So that was the only thing.
You said that's how you identified. You mean black?
Yeah. I identified more as black. And I think in high school, starting listening to more, R&B music. And that was kind of how I started to identify and kind of navigate through the world.
So you have the boxes, right? I remember when I was growing up, you had to check your box if you were black, you were white, you were Hispanic, etc. They didn't have, nowadays they have the choice where you can pick multiple boxes if you are of mixed race. But back then, I grew up in the South, you grew up in the North, so it's probably a bit different. Right. But I had to pick a box. I've always would taught to identify as, whatever, one drop of black, make you black. That's what we was taught, growing up in the South. Your daddy's black, you black. My dad is black, so I'm black. But I had to pick a box. And so my box was always black. Sometimes I even scribbled in both of them. But so what was that for you? Like, what box did you check if you had to?
Are you asking me? Or
I'm actually asking David because he would have had to been the one to check the box. I guess as a parent you would have to as well.
Yeah.
human. We would check other and put human race.
Yeah. And you know what was interesting about it was that I think it was confusing for me because when you get messages, they were trying to do this kind of utopian, race doesn't matter thing. You're a member of the human race. But then when you go out into the world, when I got into Ivy League institutions, I would have white friends tell me, well, the only reason you got in is because of affirmative action. That kind of stuff. Right. So I was clear about how the world saw me. And I think that the person that actually said it the best was actually Lenny Kravitz, when he talked about how he claimed both identities, and it was because of his mother, who was the actress. Her name was Roxy. I forget her last name, but she was on the Jeffersons, and she told him at one point, "Look, you're both black and you're Jewish. You're white and you're Jewish and white part, and you're black as well. But the world is going to see you another way." And so I think for me, that kind of encapsulated how I looked at things. I would never want to deny one side or the other, but I also knew and was learning my experiences of how the external world was treating me. And so that kind of shaped my identity coming out. And I mean, the thing is that I think for anyone who's biracial, or if you're lighter skinned, depending on your complexion, that's going to dictate how people react towards you. And of course, if you're people who are darker skinned are going to get more discriminated against. People who are lighter skinned are not. That's just how this country is, unfortunately, from both white people, and then it's been internalized within the black community as well, as far as colorism. But I think that shapes how someone identifies, how the world sees them. And you can shield them. You can shield children and people in your family as much as you want, but when they go out to the world, you can't. You can't protect them.
They're gonna hit you.
I have a curious question for me, and I want to encourage everybody watching, please ask questions in the comments, and we're going to save it, all questions to the end, but we'll be answering some questions from some of our commenters. But so I have a curious question for you guys. For me, I've always felt, because I'm not the complexion of my mom, I'm not my dad is really dark, my mom is white. I wasn't the complexion of either of them. I would be out with either of them, and people wouldn't believe that I was their child. They wouldn't believe that those were my parents. I'm curious to know if you guys have dealt with that, and how did it make you feel for Miss Donna to have a child that I would say does not look like me? Although we can see past colors and see I have features and things of that nature, but 9 times out of 10, someone is going to question, at least growing up back in those days, question if this is your child or not, or if this is your mom or not. At least that's what I dealt with a lot in the South, and I'm curious to know what you guys experienced as it relates to that.
Yes, I got that questions. I got those questions in the market. And you adopted a baby? I said, no, this is mine.
Yeah.
And you would see their face, and you would know right away.
I can tell that you are a very stern woman, and you don't play too much. You're like, I said what I said, and let's move on.
I can't stand that. I just can't stand ignorant people. It's beyond me. Yeah. It's just beyond me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's even with my son. My son is darker than I am, and people ask me if that's my son because he's darker than me as well. So, I had that experience as a parent, feeling that way, and I also had that experience as a child, questioning whether or not my mom or my dad, most times my mom, if that was really my mother.
Right.
And then, I was always going in school with the white mom, to the point where that was obviously not something that people loved about me or was loving towards me because of that. So it made me feel shame, sometimes you almost have to come out of the closet as having a white mom, just as you have to come out of the closet, as just sexuality. I mean, it's very similar. It was very similar. But David, did you ever experience any shame of being a biracial person?
I don't know if there was shame for being a biracial person. It would depend on how people would experience me or look at me, and they'd say, oh, you're biracial, or oh, I just thought you were light skinned, or, it would be stuff like that. Or, in college, I got the, oh, I want to get married to somebody like you because, although I'm bald now, but I had curly hair back then, and people would be like, yeah, well, I want my kids to have curly hair like yours. And so we weren't raised, you guys didn't raise me like that. So I didn't know what that was until I got into college. And then I was like, oh, okay, there's this whole light skin, dark skin thing. And then I started to realize at a certain time that was it. I don't think I've experienced any discrimination for being biracial. I do think there's obviously some kickback. And I think as someone who's biracial, someone who's lighter skinned, you have to acknowledge your privilege on some levels, when you navigate certain spaces and how white people are going to respond to me versus how they responded to my father, who was darker. So that's just the reality of it, like I said before. So for me, there wasn't any shaming, I think, for being biracial. I think it was just a weird thing where, in high school, most of my friends were white and they said certain things and they had a lot of racist members of their families. And they would say racist things in front of me, but they would use that excuse like, oh, well, you and your dad, you guys are different. And you're different. And so, so that was the excuse that we got. But no real shame about being biracial per se.
So you got teased for being Black growing up. You didn't get teased for being biracial growing up.
I don't think I got, and it wasn't really teased. It was just the kids were predominantly white, so they were racist. And so they just looked at me as the exception. I was the smart kid in school. I was popular. I helped a lot of them cheat on their exams because I was smarter than them. So it was like, I got a pass because of that. So, they were friends with me for certain reasons, but they would make certain slips during times in front of me and then apologize. And, me, I was just, oh, it's okay. And then I'd move on. And then I remember when I went off to college and then came back, we were playing poker and one of my friends was telling this kind of really racist, obnoxious Black joke. And I told him, I said, that's not funny. And he said, well, look at you, you went off to college and got all radical. And I was like, what? Just because you can't tell a racist joke in our home when my father is sitting a few feet away from you and you're always in my house, like, what is the disconnect? But again, I think for a lot of white people who are racist, they won't believe it because they'll say, well, my husband's Black or my wife is Black or my kids are biracial, so I can't be racist. Or, my friend is Black, or they'll say, well, you're the exception. You're not like them. And so that's always a little bit of an interesting dynamic to me.
Right. So then how have you ever felt that you had to prove your Blackness amongst the Black community?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how exactly they were defining it. Being light skinned, there's always going to be a certain amount of assumptions that people make about me, what I want to do, what my interests are.
What are some of those things?
Yeah, people would always, come to me like I would be stuck up, I would be snobby. I always thought I was better than everybody else, those kind of things. And then when they would meet me and I was just down to earth, then they would be like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess you're cool. And so that was about it. But yeah, I didn't really feel like I had to prove anything. But I've heard people say that, like, it is something where you say, if you're light skinned or biracial, if you say something that's kind of like Black Lives Matter or something like that, there's a certain subsegment of the population that would be like, oh, well, you're just doing that to overcompensate because you're light skinned or because you're biracial. Right. And so you can't just be doing that. And so I guess white people can't say Black Lives Matter because they're operating out of guilt, but only darker skinned people can say Black Lives Matter and do kind of, progressively Black things. But for some reason,
let me ask you something, because I just had a discussion about this on Facebook. Would you call that a privilege for darker skin in the Black community?
I would never call it a privilege for darker skin in the Black community, not with that at least. I think it's privilege because we navigate in some of the same circles. So I've been blessed to have some people in my life that have kind of woke me up to a lot of different things. But I remember, I think it was Cleo Monago called me one time. He said I was his Trojan horse, because back then Cleo didn't have his doctorate. He didn't have his PhD. And people wouldn't listen to some of the things he was saying, but they would listen to me because I had a medical degree and I was light skinned. So aesthetically, they looked at me and said, oh, they would receive a message from me more so than they would receive it from him. And I've seen that a lot. I didn't see, like when people said I had light skin privilege, I would look around at my Princeton University classmates and most of them were brown to dark skinned. There were very few light skinned people that were in there. I was like, well, if light skin is such a privilege of getting into college, how come there aren't more of us in here? But I will say that when you go into certain spaces, if you look more closely to white, of course white people are going to listen to you more or receive a message more from someone who looks more closely like them than they would from someone who's darker skinned. So I don't believe there's kind of a dark skin privilege as far as that's concerned.
So what would you call the because I guess, like you said, the darker, you just talked about the darker you are, the more less questioned you are about your motives behind Black Lives Matter.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think that's privilege, though. I just think that's kind of how I think that's a reaction to white supremacy and colorism, that people are going to do that. And also it's an acknowledgement of the reality that someone like, what's the guy that's on Grey's Anatomy, Jesse Williams, will be able to say something and it'll be received better than if somebody darker skinned, if an actor who was darker skinned said the same thing. Jesse Williams would be received a lot easier for that. So that's kind of a reality.
Yeah, I mean,
I think a lot of the backlash.
If Barack Obama was darker skinned, he probably wouldn't have been president.
Very true.
And you can just look at most of the Black men that are being affected by police brutality are of darker skin. I mean, so I think it's ignorant not to realize and it's across all cultures, but especially in the Black community. I want to ask one last question for you, Ms. Donna. Were you afraid to have kids with a Black man?
Absolutely not.
Where does that courage come from? Where does that lack of fear come from when it comes to something that was so not accepted back then?
Well, yeah, back then in 1967, there were many states that we could not get married.
Yeah, I know. I know. My was like 1967 or 60.
Yeah, so let me just tell you, the first time I met Roger, such a gentleman, I knew that he was the one. I knew it the first date. And from that point on, there was no question.
Love conquers all.
No question.
No. 52 years.
52 years.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, love is a powerful thing. But I appreciate you guys for sharing your stories with us. I want you to hang out until the end to get any questions that some of our viewers are watching. But I'm going to go ahead and switch gears a little bit and bring on my mom.
All right.
Miss Rita Faye.
All right, here I am.
There you are. I just want to say welcome to Black Enough, Bad Enough Live, the series. I really, really appreciate you for doing this because I know you were really nervous about it. You don't like the spotlight, but you agreed to do it because I'm your favorite son.
Yes.
And I just want to publicly thank you. I've thanked you already, but I want to publicly thank you for allowing me to share my story, which is also your story. I know I told a lot of, I shared a lot of stories about us. I shared a lot of stories about you and your life, and I know that's not easy for anybody. So thank you for being open and vulnerable to that and sharing yourself with the world, because that's really what you are doing I'm opening this up and you're sharing yourself with the world too. So I really, really appreciate you for that.
I know. Hey, only for you.
Only for me.
Only for you.
So did you hear the reading that I did?
I'm sorry. Say that again.
Were you here when I was doing the reading for my book?
Oh yes. Yes.
Do you remember that story?
I do. I do remember some of it. I don't remember it exactly going that way, but I do remember it. Yes. But I remember when I seen the ad and I was all excited about putting you in there, because I just thought that, you would be the perfect one. I wasn't thinking, I think I was thinking that you're going to be the perfect one because of the color of your skin. Not thinking they were looking for somebody darker. I thought they would look for somebody that was,
So that was kind of like what we just talked about. That was like
Yes.
a light skin privilege.
Right, but that's what I actually thought, that because you were a pretty boy.
Because I was a pretty black boy, if you will, and especially in Charleston, it's that culture there is heavily rooted in light skin, dark skin, white, black. So it's something that's very apparent.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So is down here for you.
Oh.
I want to know what was in your mind, or when you first got pregnant with Connie, which is my older sister for everybody. And just to give a little backstory without giving too much of the book away, I want to share with everyone. So you, back then, 60s, 70s, things were obviously a lot different. Not that different as we're seeing right now that's going on, but you came from a family that was not accepting of black people. They were racist. So you grew up in a family around a lot of racists.
Right.
And here you are. Now you meet this black man. You obviously were never that way. You never picked up the racist gene, as I would like to say. So you were always open-minded, never in that way. So obviously you're open to dating a black man. But what is in your mind when you get pregnant, because you guys were not married yet, you get pregnant by a black man, and now you're going to have biracial black kids, if you will. So what was that like for you?
Yeah, I was scared. I was real scared because, for one thing, my family did not know I was seeing a black man at that time. And so when I got pregnant with Tawny, I didn't know what to do. I was really confused. Well, okay, how would I, bring a black child into this world? Only because of how my family felt. I always worried about how my family was going to feel, because my family it was fun. They liked black people as long as you didn't bring them to the family. They know that, they were just, like I said, they were racist. And I don't want to speak for all my family, because I have a lot of family, cousins and, and that go down the line. I'm just talking about
but
my
at least the one that matters
family.
the most.
My
the
close
ones
family.
that matter the most.
Right. So it was really hard for me. And I remember when I did have Tawny, my sister didn't even know, because I was living with Ann, my sister, at the time when I got pregnant with Tawny. And and I remember Ann was living in West Virginia at that time. And when I went in labor, my best girlfriend, Linda, was with me. I'm sorry, Linda and I had an apartment together. And when I went in labor with Tawny, Linda says, "Have you told anybody in the family that, your child, you're having a child by a black man?" And I said, "No, I have nobody in the family knows." I says, "I have not told anybody." And she says, "Well, you need to tell them, Rita, because they're going to find out." And I said, "I'm just not ready yet." And Linda is actually the one that called my sister and told my sister, because Ann said, Ann was so excited because she was going to have a niece, and she couldn't wait to get to the hospital, because she, she drove to Maryland from West Virginia to come to the hospital to see her niece. And before she got to the hospital, my best girlfriend called her and told her, "I think I got some news to tell you. Don't be surprised. Rita had a child by a black man." And Ann was, Ann always was like a mother to me. So she kind of like knew what's going to happen, how the family was going to take it. So she knew that she had to stand up for me, because nobody else was going to. So even her husband told her, said, "Hey, if your sister don't really is going to need you now." So when she came to the hospital, and she went and seen Tawny before she came to see me, and the only thing she could do when she came to the room was kept saying what a beautiful child she was. What a beautiful child. So it was just like, she was ready. She's a fighter. So she was ready to, hey, anybody's not going to say nothing about Rita and the child. So she was going to stand up, even though I'm not saying that she liked it, but she was going to, stand by me regardless. So it was hard, but of course, after all, you have your child. My gosh, you know, you just fall in love with him. So you don't think about who cares after that. That's how.
So what were you most afraid of? What were you most afraid of about having Black children?
I was afraid, well, not with you, because, you know, I already went through all that with Tawny. Yeah. So with Tawny, I was afraid that basically the same thing that happened. My family wouldn't have nothing to do with me after that. And that is what happened. You know, it was a long time before. And I'm, like I said, my mom and my stepfather, who came from West Virginia, and he was, in fact, okay, Tawny was born in November, and I know, you know the story. I know Tawny does. I mean, yeah, Tawny was born in November, so nobody told my mom and stepdad that, you know, Tawny was, you know, I had Tawny by a Black man. So when I brought Tawny,
yeah, no, you can't tell all the story now. Some of that's in the book. We're gonna have to let people read the book.
All right, I will leave that part out if you can.
So I want to move that part past.
Okay, let's do that.
Part.
Okay.
And I want to actually talk about now you moving down to the South with Daddy.
Uh-huh.
You know, right after you had me back in 1977.
Right.
You know, I was 2 months old. Now you want to move to Charleston.
Where Daddy wanted to move. Daddy wanted to move.
Daddy wanted to move to Charleston.
Right.
All of you leaving all of your white family, friends, although you have Black friends in DC too, but you know, you leaving all your whiteness is now
exactly.
In Maryland. And so you're moving here with Dad's family in a Black neighborhood, Black family, and now you're the only white girl around.
That's right.
So I want to know what that was like for you coming, because you know, I want to, you know, let everybody know. I mean, you got to think this is back in
the 70s,
late 70s, early 80s in the South. Here's this Black man, my dad, who left the South, went to the military, and that's a big thing. I mean, that's you doing very well for yourself. You're going to the military, you're getting this great job, and now he's bringing a white girl home with him to the South.
Right.
You being that white girl, what was that like for you? Like, what even made you agree to do that? Because you had to be afraid of being in a situation.
Well, I was afraid, and if you recall, right, I didn't come right away. You know, I actually held off a little bit with you. I kept you, and your father came on down here with Tawny, and I wasn't ready to come down here because, you know, I had a story. It's funny because I used to work with this man in Maryland, and he was my boss. And when he found out I was moving down south, he would always tease me and say, "Oh, they're going to hang you when you get there. You know, you don't no white and Black, you know, or be together. They're going to hang you when you get there." Of course, he was making a joke out of it, but of course, it always stuck in my mind. And but when I came down here, Virgil's your father's family was very welcoming to me and stuff. Of course, I was one of these ones, I wanted to meet my own friends, you know. I mean, I didn't want his family just to be my friends. And your father worked a lot of graveyard shifts, swing shifts. And when he wasn't working, he was always sleeping, trying to catch up with all his sleep. So I was, I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to be accepted. So I had fun, and we were living with your grandmother for the first couple of months until the house was being built. And of course, you know, I mean, it was hard, but I mean, I felt like I fit in. I mean, I went through a lot of hard times being a white woman with a Black man. I think all the the Black guys seemed like they accepted it well. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of the Black women didn't. I felt like I went through a lot of rough time, you know. So if anything, it made me stronger to stand my guard, because I knew I had to. Because if not, they would have felt like they would have walked all over me. And of course, we're talking about back in the 70s too, and the early 80s, you know. So, and we were the first mixed couple, you know, on James Island.
Yeah, I mean, I might remember one other mixed race child in our school, if that. But I mean, I know we're kind of like, you know, one of the only.
Yes.
I think. What was it like for you to? I want to ask you the same question I asked David's mom. What was it like for you to have kids that you were continuously being questioned if those were your kids, and because you were white, we were mixed, Dad was Black. And so we were off the question. I remember going on public all the time, people pointing at us, you know, I can't believe they're together. Like, wow, that's your son, or wow, this is your mom. Like, how did that feel for you?
You know, really, it didn't bother me it really didn't bother me at all. I mean, because y'all were my children, you know, and I had to stand up. You know, I don't think I went out there thinking if somebody looked at y'all funny. I mean, one time I had someone come to me and ask me, "Oh, you know, what are your children Mexicans?" You know, and I was like, "No, they're black." You know,
Yeah.
so I never had a problem, you know, saying, you know, what y'all were. You know, that I said my husband was black. You know, I mean, there was times when I had to hide it. You know, when I worked at jobs because I had, I was laid off jobs when when my boss or whoever I worked for, company I worked for, found out I was married. Of course, they didn't say that's why they let me go, but I knew, you know, because once it came out, I would go to work and I didn't have a job the next day.
Yeah. What was the conversation like with you and Daddy about how you guys would raise us as mixed race kids? Like, what was that? Because I don't really remember, any conversation about, what we were when it comes to race. One thing I do always remember saying, you guys are mixed, you mix.
Right.
What did you and Daddy talk about when it came to how you would raise us, if anything? I mean, I know this
we didn't. We didn't talk about that because, everything just fell in place. I guess that's not something we talked about. I knew that it was, I always took up, when, for example, when y'all went to school, of course, Tony never was no problem. But when it came to you, when you were in school and was acting up with the bad kid and stuff, and I used to, and when the white teachers would call me at work and tell me, come there, and, of course, you always I always believed you said, Mama, that they don't like me because I'm black. And I used to always, take up for you and stuff. So your father and I just never had that kind of conversation. I think it just, we just never did. I guess we didn't feel like it was something that we needed to talk about because we just, and I think
it was even something you knew how to talk about.
Well, yeah. Well, not only that, you got to realize, Greg, maybe if we stayed up north, maybe it would have been different. But coming down south, I mean, I know y'all went through your different things with different children, but I think y'all were pretty well liked because y'all were different because of the color of your skins.
Well, did you read my book? Because that's not how I felt.
Well, I did read it, but I mean, that's how I felt, but there's a lot of things I didn't know until I read your book either,
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know.
So
what was most, that goes to one of my questions though. I was going to ask you, did you know that I struggled so much with racial identity and trying to fit in with kids and trying to be more like them and look like them, because I did stand out so much. And on one hand, everybody would say, "Oh my God, they have such pretty kids and your pretty hair, yada yada." That wasn't,
what
people
I always thought
as kids, they cast you out for that because it's something that's different. So you're made to feel different. You're made to feel like an outcast because everybody wants to be the same.
Yeah. Well, see, I didn't. To be honest, I didn't see that. I felt like you felt what my thought was with you wasn't because of, you felt different with how you're being treated. I thought it was because at that, when you were younger, you were heavier. And I always felt like you had a complex about your weight and you were teased about your weight. I never knew you were teased about the color of your skin or your pretty hair. I always thought you got teased because you were heavy, you were on the heavy side.
Well, I didn't heavy until middle school now. So, I mean, in elementary school, I was very skinny. I mean,
well,
so I got biracial, and then being gay, faggot, whatever the case may be. So it was those two things I struggled with. Then in middle school, I picked up the fat things. Then it became,
but when you were in elementary school, I mean, like I said, if you felt that way, you never talked about it.
Yeah.
You kept it hidden from us. I mean, I don't ever remember you coming to me and saying, Mom, I'm being teased,
Yeah, I didn't. I did. Some of the things I even wrote about, I never.
No, you didn't.
And I don't really know why. I know why I didn't.
But I remember sometimes when you would tell me something, about something, I would go to Tawny and I would ask Tawny, and Tawny was like, Tawny, do you have problems with that time? Like, no, Mama, So
Yeah, she was really, really, me and Connie were like completely different because Connie was very popular.
I always thought you were popular.
Yeah, I always wanted to be popular, but I'm glad you thought so.
I mean, I thought you were popular. I mean, now in elementary school, I mean, I'm not talking about elementary school because I don't think no children are really popular in elementary school, you know. But as you got into high school and all, I felt like you were pretty popular. I mean, you had a lot of friends, or did a lot of things together. So your homeschool boys that you still talk to and be with.
So got them, yeah. So let me ask you, what time is it?
It is about 10 to 9. I mean, 10 to 10.
10 to 9. So see, we have some other questions some people want to ask, but I want to ask you, in raising me now, in all of your wisdom and all of your years of living now, just looking back on things, what are some things that you feel like you might have done differently?
You're talking about with you coming up from a young child.
Yeah, coming up, and what you know now when it comes to race, when it comes to mixed race, what do you feel like you could have told us as younger, young kids, or even as a younger woman?
I don't. That's kind of a touchy question to ask me, Greg.
Why?
Well, I don't know, because I mean, are you saying you're asking me to how would I, like the first question you asked me when like with your father and I, we talked about, with y'all being a mixed race, how we,
it could be that if you felt like that. Yeah. It could be anything. I mean, I'm just curious to know.
Well, I mean, personally, I wish that I did things more different. As being, I came from a strict family, right? My family was very, very strict. When I left home, I was on the wild side, when I left, before I met your father and stuff. So I think when I met with your father and stuff, I was like one of these women that I enjoyed. I was never able to go out and have fun, enjoy doing the things that I wanted to do. And then when I was able to, maybe I feel like I should have been more at home at times where I wasn't at home. I'll put it like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we had our special bonds together, but I know we had a lot of bad times together too, because I was a wild child.
Well, yeah, and
I mean, when I say different, I wish that there's a lot of things we all regret that we've done in our past. You don't learn to go to school. You don't learn to go to school how to be a mom.
Yeah.
So I felt like I try to do the best I can. I always loved y'all, I felt like I always let y'all know I loved y'all, So maybe to answer that question, maybe I felt like I should have showed more love, that I could have showed more love than, because like now, I feel like I can, as being older and, have grandchildren, I show much more love now than when I did when I was more younger. But you got to realize I didn't come from that type of family either.
Yeah. And that's kind of how it is for me too. And I don't want to say not show love, because I think we all have our ways of showing love. But I guess as you get older, your love shows up in more traditional tenderness and physical affectionate ways.
Yeah.
And because we didn't grow up like that, that's how I am. I tried to be more intentional with being affectionate with, G or whatever. But it's a struggle for me too.
Yeah, I think I try to make up for what I didn't do when y'all were younger. I try to make up for it now as much as I can, showing y'all more love. Not that I didn't show it back then, but I think that, like I said, as I've gotten older, I've learned how to show more love. I'm more compassionate and more caring. I think I was one of those mothers. I was a very strict mom. Your dad was the easy one. I was always the hard one.
Tough cookie. I used to tell everybody that was one of the things, people talk about black moms and white moms. I was like, she was not the timeout white mom. She was the one that whooped my ass.
I was a very strict mom. I was.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like that was a good thing But then sometimes by being so strict and so hard, maybe I didn't show the love that I could have, because trying to be a hard person, being a hard mom, because I always wanted y'all to, to be something. So I always try to stay on top of y'all.
I got you. So lastly, before I start asking some other questions, also bring Dave and his mom back, I want to ask you, what advice would you give a young white woman that is raising a Black family with a Black husband? What piece of advice would you give them?
Well, I would just tell them, nowadays, I don't think people look at it as bad, but if they're having a hard time, you just have to stay strong. And if anything, it's going to just make them a stronger person. Just stand by your man. If that's who you want to be with, stand by him and stay with your children. It's going to everything's going to be okay. It's going to turn out all right. You just can't let other people, if I let other people get involved in our marriage, your father and I would have been divorced a long time ago. Yeah. So you have to let people stay out of your relationship.
That's some very solid advice. See where I get all my relationship skills? Keep people out of your business. So,
that's right. You just can't let people into your relationship. You just leave people out of it. And that's what I would recommend any young white girl, because she's going to go through, she'll go through it, hard times, because there's always going to be that one person out there. But just don't let anybody get into your relationship. Stay strong and keep them out.
Thank you. Keep them out. Stand by your man. That's what Mama Smalls said. So let me bring back Dave and his mom, and we can kind of go through some of the questions that were asked by some of our by some of our viewers today. Hi, there you are, always smiling.
We're back. Hey, Mama Smalls, how are you?
All right. Hello. It's nice to meet y'all.
So one of the questions I have here. Okay, so from Leonard Goodwine, which is one of my very good friends from college, he wants to know, and he's asking both of us, David, if either of us had a tug of war on who we would date as far as race is concerned.
Oh, you want me to answer that first? That's okay. There wasn't a tug of war. I've always been attracted to other Black men, so there's never really been a tug of war.
You've only ever dated Black.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, other people have wanted me or said that, well, that's not fair. If you're biracial, you have to date both. And I was like, what kind of rule is there? Is there a rule? I didn't understand. So, but I just you can't really force what you're drawn to or who you're attracted to. And it's great if people are attracted to people of all different races and ethnicities. I just tend to, my physical, my romantic, my spiritual, my emotional connections tend to be more with other Black men. That's all. So it's not really a tug of war for me.
For me, I don't know if I would say it's ever been a tug of war. I've also predominantly always dated Black. When I was younger in elementary school, I had white girlfriends. I remember having I've always had girlfriends. Ever since kindergarten, I've always had girlfriends. And so I think my first girlfriend was white. But as I got older, when I started really dating, I've always been attracted to just Black, and I've always admired darker skin because I always wanted darker skin. So I got a tan for this show right now. but I've always been attracted to darker skin. Now, as I've gotten older and just over the years, I find myself attracted to all different types of people. But yeah, growing up, I've always dated Black, and I grew up in a predominantly Black neighborhood. So, you never know why you do what you do. You just do it. So, but that's me.
Yeah.
Somebody said, "Hey, Rita."
Hey.
So, from Nathan Youngerberg, I'm biracial, adopted by white parents, and grew up in Wisconsin. My white birth mother feels rejected because I identify as Black. This is a very good question because I kind of feel like my mom kind of experiences a little bit. So just listen. Because he identifies as Black, his white birth mother sometimes feels rejected. And he wants to know if either of us have ever experienced that. And I think all four of us could answer this question. I'll go ahead and answer it first. I guess actually, Mom, you answered that first because it's really a question for the both of you guys. And I haven't asked David how you identify, but just so everybody knows how I identify, I always tell people that I am a Black man of mixed race. Or I'm a biracial Black man.
Yes.
But
Well,
I want to hear from you, Mom. Like, how does that make you feel?
It bothers me some. I'm not gonna lie. It does because sometimes when I see like little things you put on Facebook and all, and sometimes I'm like, doesn't realize that he's got white in him also. Yes, I'm like, it's like, like it's always, like you, for example, we just had the conversation, you and I, just recently about white privilege and all, and I kind of like understood what you was when you were saying that, but like I said, I mean, it does bother me some. I don't let it get me down, but it bothers me.
If you had if you could answer the question for me, what would the perfect answer for you be on how I answered that question if somebody asked me how I identify?
How would I want you to answer?
Yeah, like what would be the perfect answer for you not to feel rejected?
Oh, I mean, I don't feel rejected if you say you're Black,
but I
also want you to identify that you're also, your mother is white, so you do have some of me, and you also, so you still have that white in you also. I always feel like you just kind of like feel like you just got Black blood in you, and you don't have no white blood in you. It's all about Black. So
I understand, and that's very truthful. I mean, and I know it has a lot to do with the environment in which I was raised and trying to be Black enough all the time. So I know I've rejected, the white part of me for a long time, and it is a journey for me to embrace that. And I know with that, that's a part of rejecting you as well. So I do realize that, and I want to validate that for you, and to know that it is a work in progress for me.
Yes.
I recognize. Miss Donna, so first of all, David, how do you identify?
I think I do the same thing you do. So I identify as a Black man, and I'll say I'm of mixed race, or I'm biracial as well, but I identify as a Black man. Sometimes, just a light-skinned Black man, that's how I identify.
Yeah. And so, Miss Donna, do you feel any sort of rejection or any feelings come up for you with how David identifies?
Absolutely none.
Well, see, I think there was a story when I was in high school or something. I had a journal, and I don't remember the details about this, but I think this happens probably in a lot of mixed race families. But I remember, and I don't know if I have the journal. I don't know what I wrote, but I think you read the journal at some point, and I think did I say I wish I was just Black?
What you said is you wish you had a Black mother.
Mm.
And I don't know where that came from. I'd have to dig up that journal, but I remember that, and I remember that did hurt you.
It did hurt me, but I understood where you were coming from.
Yeah. I think for my mother, like, and her and my dad both, they just wanted to spare me and my sister any kind of pain. And I remember you saying that a lot, like, look, we just wanted to spare you some of this stuff. My dad would often say before he died, like, I wish I hadn't come here from Haiti. He would say, I'm glad that I met, my wife. I'm glad we were married for 52 years. We had wonderful children, but the racist stuff that goes on in this country, and she would say the same thing. I wish we could have spared you from those things. And so I remember that hurt her. I remember us having a conversation about that. And I even remember with Dad, there was a point in time where he felt that my sister was ashamed that he was Black. And so it was like a weird kind of thing where she felt rejected, or she felt that a certain kind of way, because Dad's father felt that way opposite from my sister. He would be more comfortable if he was white. So it's really an interesting thing. And, you know, when I was listening to what you guys were saying earlier, you know, there are a lot of parallels with my mom. There's some differences between the North and the South, obviously. But one of the things that struck me, Ms. Rita, that you were saying was that, you know, I think for the kids who are biracial, we have to struggle and navigate our own journeys. But for you guys that just fell in love and were with somebody and were like, you know, I love this person, I'm going to have, you know, their baby, you weren't really thinking about, you know, well, let's explain the racial birds and the bees to everybody. You're just kind of being a parent and having to deal with general parent stuff. And that's your perspective.
Right.
But for the kids, we're kind of struggling because the external world is telling us different stuff and we're getting different feedback. And so it's a matter of perspective. But it was really interesting hearing you talk about that because you sounded a lot like my mom, the way she raised us.
Yes, because my family, my mother died when I was 8, but my father was alive, and I was shifted from one aunt to another aunt's house to another aunt's house and the grandmother's house, and then finally ended up with one aunt. And there was only one Black family in our town, and the community ran that town out, that person out. I mean, it was awful.
And this is upstate New York. This is
upstate.
Yes. Okay.
As a young lady, they were walking on the same side of the street as I was to cross and get on the other side of the street. Very sad thing that somebody remembers something like that.
Yes.
And what changed my mind is I went to be a candy striper at one of the hospitals, and they had doctors from India, China, Japan, the Philippines, African countries, of every nationality, and patients the same. And we all bled the same way. It changed my whole attitude. That was in my junior year of high school. And from that point on, I couldn't look at anybody who was a different color than me and hate that person for what reason? Unless he or she gave me a reason. There's no reason for that. I don't understand people. I just don't understand so much hatred in them. I just can't.
Yes, I can relate to that. I know I was always different from the rest of my family. I could never understand how I always loved everybody. I never looked at nobody. They say you can't look at somebody because of color of the skin. Of course you see the color of the skin, but I've always been one of these people that, I mean, I just love everybody. So like you said, if as long as they treated me right, I treated them right. I never disliked them because the color of their skin. I always my family was very prejudiced, and I was one of these ones that I went to school with Black kids, and it was just like I said, I was just always different. But from the rest of my family, but.
I used to always call my mama. I would always say, my mom was like Tina Marie. I always make that joke.
Rita, did your
yes.
You?
I'm sorry. My phone's breaking up. I'm
sorry. I can't hear it that well either. What was the question?
Did your mom's family disown her?
Yeah. Yes, my mom. They did for a long time. My mom's family disowned me. I did. My father was never in my life. I had a stepfather that was from West Virginia, and he was real country. And so he put a lot of stuff in my mother's head. But after he passed, my mother got to meet my husband, and after she met my husband, she fell in love with my husband. I mean, she cried. Just as much as I did when my husband died. Because she just fell in love with my husband. She just loved him so much. But at first, yes, they did disown me. I came to Charleston, South Carolina. I didn't start having a relationship with my mom until probably the early 90s. Wow. I mean, a really good relationship, very a good relationship. And we actually moved back up to Virginia because when my husband worked at the shipyard, that's when Greg first went to college. we moved back to Virginia, and that's when everybody got to really meet my husband, because we didn't go back and forth and visit before then because they didn't like him because he was black. But then once we moved up there, they started getting more closer to me, and my husband and I started going visiting my mom, and so everybody got to meet him, and they all fell in love with him, after they got to meet him. And
happens to a lot of people. You just have to break that barrier. Unfortunately, my father never saw me again after he found out that I was married to a black man. Even on his deathbed, my brother, who found me, came to see me because he wanted to know my husband, and they became very good friends.
Yes.
On my father's deathbed.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like I said, my mom loved my mom loved my husband. I mean, they all, when he died, they were all here, with me when he passed, was here for the funeral and all. And like I said, it really hurt her, because in fact, she said she never thought he would go before her, because, she was much older. So, and it really, they got very close. My mom and my husband loved her also. They very much. And my sister, the same sister that I talked about, that was always had my back. She loved. They all loved him.
Yeah.
I think
y'all both have such similar stories. And run at parallel, and I just think that both of you show a lot of strength and a lot of courage. It's very courageous for you to choose yourself, because that's really what you do. You chose yourself and your family, but ultimately you chose yourself over and really risked it all. You really risked it all and lost a large part. I think that speaks a lot to the women that both of you are, and I just want to. I want to thank both of you for having the courage to raise sons like David and myself.
Well, you're welcome.
That we do have two sons like you. That's
right. y'all they make us very proud.
That's right.
They make us very proud. How can we not?
Well, again, I want to thank all of y'all for joining me. Thank everybody for watching. I think both of you ladies did a great job. I know you both were feeling a little anxious about it, but I think that all of the comments, everybody really enjoyed the conversation. I think Daniel is going to pop back on. Daniel, I know you went a little bit over. But again, my book is out, guys. Please go out and get it off of Amazon and Apple. Next week, I'm going to have a discussion that's going to be called Brother to Brother. And it's going to be a conversation between straight black men and non-straight black men. And so what that relationship is like, because I grew up with a wonderful support system of black, heterosexual, strong black men. And so I'm going to have actually one of them on next week to talk about that as well. But we're going to talk about how we can just be more cohesive and work together more. So
I love it. G, congratulations on the book, because I remember us having the conversation in your house and reading it and stuff, and I was just very impressed. So I know how long of a journey it's been for you. So just congratulations, and thank you for having me on the show and getting to meet your mom and having my mom come on to meet you. This has been a joy.
Absolutely. I mean, it's been my pleasure. I thought Daniel was coming back, but maybe he's not. So I'll just go ahead and close it out.
Okay.
Again, thank you, everybody.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Bye, you guys.
Good night.